Hey everyone, today we're talking about Zoom registration, meeting reports after your meetings are over, and polling. Everyone on the meeting has agreed to be recording so that we can share this with other people. I'm going to start, I'm still sharing my screen, and I wanted to start with the Zoom login. I think it makes sense to look at registration first, and then to look at the meeting reports, and we'll cover polling in the middle because it has to be done as a part of your meeting setup. So you'll see when you schedule a new meeting, which is often with a registration type meeting, it's more of a webinar. So right here under registration, you can require registration. For this, I'm going to leave everything else just as its default setup so that I can show you what happens when you enable registration. Also wanted to mention this new feature that you're going to see, enable language interpretation. This is new if you're doing a webinar in multiple languages and you need someone to be hand typing a translation of it as the meeting is going on. This will allow you to designate someone as the interpreter and allow people to choose the channel to watch that. I do not have any tutorials on how that works yet because it just was turned on for us, but we'll be doing that in a future session if that's something you need to know more about. I'm leaving it off for right now. I do recommend if you're having webinars that if you have people who will be helping you out, that you make them alternative hosts. It helps so that you don't forget to make them a co-host when they're in the meeting. This will automatically let them be a co-host from the minute they drop in the meeting.
Bonnie,
Yes.
two quick questions. To be a co-host, they have to be Antioch email, right?
To be set up as an alternative host in advance, I believe they have to be an Antioch email. When you're in the meeting, you can right-click on any user and make them a co-host, regardless of whether they're logged in or if they're an Antioch user.
Okay, and then just lastly, real quick, what you're doing right here for registration is for meetings. It's a different process if you're actually doing a registration for a webinar.
So Harold controls our webinar account. Harold, feel free to chime in if I say anything that doesn't make sense. The webinar account is different and you have to go through Harold in order to use that, but you can effectively set up, because we can have 300 people at a time in our regular meetings. A webinar is essentially a one-way where people's videos and microphones are muted, but
Yeah.
they usually participate via chat.
Yes.
And you can do that in a meeting on your own if you don't want to engage with Harold in the webinar account. I believe the webinar account allows up to 500 users.
Right. So it really comes down to how many people you might have.
And how much interaction you want. I don't know if the webinar account allows you to turn on everybody else's video and microphone or not.
No.
It does, but you have to promote them to panelists to do it.
Yeah.
Okay, so only panelists' microphones and videos will work, and participants don't.
That's good. Yeah, that's what I want, Harold.
Okay.
Perfect. All right, so when you've created your meeting and you hit save, you land on the meeting details. And you'll see that this registration link now says registration link and not meeting link like a usual meeting does. This is what you send out for people to register. You'll see the copy of the invitation is an invitation to register. And after registering, you'll receive a confirmation email containing the information about how to join the meeting. So you can just copy that and send it out. And I'll show you what they get when they click on the registration link. A simple email with the topic. So make the name of your meeting effective. It could even be pretty long if you want, to help clarify exactly what you'll be talking about. The time, and then they just have to put in their first name and last name and email address. twice, of course. Which I agree is a little bit annoying, but it really does prevent a problem if someone puts a typo in their email. And then they click register. Oh, all right, I'll have to lie. I'll put in my home email address. All right. And this is essentially the email that they get that gives them, please click the URL, this URL to join. They'll get that in their email so that they have it, and they can add it to their calendar by using the Google Calendar. And this is what I usually do. I click on Google Calendar, then I don't have to keep the email in order to attend that event. It puts it on my calendar, it puts the content in it, and you'll see if you approve those two allow buttons, it allows Gmail to put a Zoom event on your calendar, and then when you save it, it'll actually appear on you, the participant's calendar. All right.
So, Bonnie?
Yeah.
When they have that on their calendar, if they go right to their calendar and click on that link, does that avoid them having to sign in, or doesn't it matter anymore because they are registered?
No. It shouldn't matter because they're registered and you have required registered people. Harold,
Right.
Do you know if it will force them to log in? Or I think because they have the link, it will know who they are.
They don't know who they are. Okay.
Yeah, all the registration stuff is handled through Zoom. It's not handled through Gmail per se.
Right. So we'll do a little test. You'll see after you have built it, when you scroll to the bottom, this is where you can come down and manage your registration. So I'll see right now, because I haven't refreshed this page, it shows I have 0 registrants. And now after I refresh the page, it knows that BJP563 registered, and it's set to automatically approve everyone. And you can edit these settings if you want to manually approve each person who's coming, which would be, let's say if you were limiting it to 25 people, you can get an email to the host when someone registers, and then you can close the registration after the event date. You can allow attendees to join from multiple devices and show social or share buttons on the registration page if you want. And then from in here, you can select different registration fields that you want to force them to fill out in order to complete the registration. By default, it's only first name, last name, and email address. But if you're allowing for multiple registrations or organizational registrations, you can add a number of employees field. You can add a postal code field so that you'll know where they're coming from, maybe what time zone they're in, that sort of thing. And then there is some room to create some custom questions, but we are prohibited from soliciting confidential personal information, which is really, really good advice. You don't want to ask for colleague ID, social security number, credit card number. Those things would be passed across, probably in clear text and not encrypted, so not safe. Okay, you can see down here, there's also email settings, and you can edit the email that is sent to them. You've got this little blurb here where you can add whatever you want to your email confirmation. And you can add a banner graphic and a logo that would be inserted in the invitation and in the response. And you'll see over here, this poll is always on your meeting page if you have it turned on in your global settings. Polling is turned on by default, so it should be available. But in order to do polling in any meeting, not just in a registered meeting, you have to set your poll up here in the meeting settings. So you'll see I clicked on poll. You have not created any poll yet. And you can create a poll for this meeting by clicking the add button. So Shelley, this is where you could add your question. The one thing about this is it doesn't allow you to type in additional feedback, like if you gave a question to be other, or if you just wanted give us some feedback on your event. You could say, how satisfied were you with this event? And then you can, that would be a single choice question. Extremely, very, you know, whatever you want. Satisfied and not. But you can't allow, you can add another question, but they don't have type in questions in Zoom polls.
Okay.
So you could add another question to this poll that added a couple, but you have to show these poll questions individually, one after the other. They don't all three come up at once if you have 3 polling questions. But they are all available in that meeting. So let's just say you wanted to start your meeting with a where are you from? You'd say Eastern United States, Central, Mountain, Pacific, and then you could list some countries, that sort of thing. And then if later in the event you wanted to say, what is your position in, you know, your educational institution, you could list some questions. And then in the meeting, I'll show you how to launch the poll questions so that people can see them. But you can have, I don't know of a practical limit to the number of poll questions you can do in a meeting, but there can be many if you want to use them throughout the course of your meeting.
And how quickly do you get the results? So could you use them for like feedback, like, okay, I'm going to ask a true false question and ask students to answer it in
Yes.
live?
The host gets it immediately. You can watch as things go in, and then you can share it back with the room. So I'm going to drag my meeting over here and show you I have a polling question in here. As the host or co-host, I have this polls button. If there are any polls set up in my account, and I only have one question in this meeting, so you'll see this polling question is specific to this meeting. And what I can do, I get the option to launch polling. And did you guys get that on top of your screen share?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what I can do is you will see as you fill it out, I have mine over here, and wherever yours is, as you fill it out, the host is seeing these results, but you guys aren't. And I have 4 of 8 votes have come in. So I say, okay, I'm going to close the poll in 1 minute. If everyone else can vote, if it's possible. I understand if you're driving a car that you can't be distracted and vote. So we're not going to force everybody. Be safe. Do the right thing. I'll close the poll in 20 seconds, whatever. And when I end the polling, it pulls down the availability for you guys to continue to answer. And then I get the results, and you're only seeing this because I'm sharing my screen. That's what you see on your screen until I choose the share the results button. And I'll just stop my sharing so that you'll see, you're not seeing my screen. You are seeing the shared results now on your screen, and then we can talk about them. So that's how you would do the live results, Shelley. And you don't even have to show the results. You can just talk about them as you see them coming in. looks like we have 20% of our people are from the Eastern United States, or 50% of them say they're doing good, 33 are great, 17 are tired. So you can report them out if it's not, if you don't need to see the numbers, or when you do that. And then you can relaunch that same poll at the end of the session if you wanted. It clears the polling results of the first one, and it continues. So what's important to know is the polling results are only available if, or this was true the last time I checked, if you required registration for your event. So if you hadn't, this event, nobody had to register to come. If I wanted these results, I can get them in this generic form. I can keep them here, and I believe they're attached to the meeting. But every time I rerun the poll, those results get overwritten. If you want to maintain the poll results, you have to have registration turned on so that you can see them in your polling results emails. So I'm not going to relaunch, and I'm going to close this, and I'm going to reshare my screen and show you the results. All right, I'm going to share this, but if we are in my meetings, you'll see this is the meeting we're in right now, and that's why I only had that polling question available. So the poll is ended here. And you can see that I have the results in here. They are anonymous. If I had turned on registration for this event, and if when I had added my polling question, I made sure that anonymous wasn't checked, you'll see user information in a poll report will be kept anonymous if you check that anonymous. But over here, this may be a little known place you haven't looked at in Zoom, in your reporting section. So your polling and registration reports are down here under meeting reports. And even if you don't have registration turned on or polling turned on, you can also get usage reports for who attended your meeting and how many minutes they were in your meeting. So you select a time period for which you want to see polling results. This side of my page always turns black when I have to scroll over there, but you'll see the latest meeting that I completed on May 21st from 2:33 p.m. to 4:02 p.m. lasted 89 minutes, and it says there were 13 participants. This number 13 is clickable, and it pulls up a full list of the meeting participants, and you can scroll within this box to see them. Now you'll see Frank was in here twice, Andrew was in here twice, here's Frank again. If you have duplicate users, you can check show unique users, and that adds up the total number of minutes they were in that session. So I opened it early and I stayed late. Deb was only in there for 5 minutes. Elizabeth was only in there for 2. And then everybody else was in there for a longer duration. You can export this meeting data. What I usually do is just come in here and count the attendees, and I put them in my little attendees spreadsheet. But if you needed to, say, check on a student who said they attended the session, the only problem is, and let me not show you this one, I'll show you a different one. Maybe it's a little bigger. If people are not logged in, then you don't get all of their data. And that's why when you have the registration reports, when you require registration, you get more accurate data. So I'm going to search and show you a bigger result. 22. All right, this one is more likely to have some people who weren't registered in it. And again, you can export this data and open it in Excel if you feel like that's an easier way to look at it. So you'll see we had someone came in as Kathy S, but no user email, and Jonathan came in with no user email. And that means they weren't signed into Zoom when they joined your session. Julie and Stephanie weren't, but they put in their full email, their full name, so I can tell who they are. So that's one of the other helpful things about requiring registration and authenticating users. And then when I, again, show unique users, it also makes it a little tighter. But that puts it in. And now, Peg, we talked about this last time. You wanted to make sure that you had everybody's email address.
Right.
And
Well,
yeah.
initially I didn't even get their last name. They'll sign in for anything if they aren't required to give me their names. It's really funny.
Right. Well, like Kathy and S, they might be using someone else's computer and that person's logged into Zoom.
One person who I just was looking at Saturday's report this morning. Her email is I am a teacup, and she signed in as some really bizarre name.
Yeah, probably her personal email address.
Yep.
So, Harold, I want to ask this question, and I'll do some more research if need be. If people register, they get the link, and they're not logged in at that day, will Zoom require them to log in to a session that requires registration?
Well,
or are those two things separated? You have to add authenticated users only.
you don't know. I know this is the
Okay.
case for webinars, is that no, you don't have to be an authenticated user or registered in any way, but it's when you sign on, when you sign up, I guess, that it makes that link with, when you actually come in that day. Now, you raise an interesting question. What if you registered for the webinar, but now you're using somebody else's computer?
I think
the
this
linkage
link
works.
is
if you're
individual, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go try this. I'm going to go to this meeting link again, and we're going to try to figure that out. Because you may want to turn on authenticated users only, unless, Harold, people outside Antioch can or can't be authenticated users. They have to have a Zoom account, or they have to have an Antioch Zoom account.
I know that the way that it works, that if you're coming in from the outside and you registered for a webinar, that it does record the fact that you attended that webinar.
Okay, so
you do not have to be a registered user.
I'm going to use a different email address. And what I'm going to see is whether I get a different email that's different than when I logged in with a different address.
Right.
All right, or if I get the same one. So 9666649. I'm going to see how close it is. 96649 MVPLT. Okay, it is different.
Yeah.
So this is unique to this user. So that's how it knows when this person clicks in, they are the person who registered. Right. This knows if anybody who clicks this email will say bjp563@antioch.edu, joined the meeting. And if I click this link, then it'll say aspenlilypride@gmail.com attended this meeting.
Right.
So if you want to, you require registration, they all get this link and this email. But if you wanted to send them a reminder, you would not be sending them a generic Zoom access link, would you?
No, because each person has their own.
Each person has their own.
You can send them a reminder of the meeting
and tell them to look for their
right.
Look for their link.
Your email for your invitation. Now, I wonder if when you manage your attendees, I'm going to refresh again. I should have 2 now. under registration, I do. View. So I don't know why you'd copy that. Okay. So copy attendee confirmation. This is how you could come in and send them their individual link.
Oh, I see.
And
That would, yeah.
But Bonnie, that
Yeah.
means
Small
that
group.
means it would be manually. I mean, it would be for each individual person to do it that way. You can't do it as like a batch.
well, that's what I'm wondering. So if you went in that way and one person needed their new link replaced, you'd have to go in and click that person. So I'm want to see how to okay, send confirmation email to registrants. If you came in here and typed this, you could put your message in here. This is a reminder that this event is coming in soon, blah, 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 blah. Save. That would resend their custom join link to each person. So this is where you
Oh.
would come in and send your reminder.
And
Sorry, can you just say where that was again?
yeah,
Sure. So it's here under the bottom of your meeting settings. I clicked on the meeting in the Zoom website. This is their send upon registration. And if you go in and edit it, this is what gets sent to them when they register. I'm not seeing that there's a way to send a reminder. All right, so let's just check Zoom support for a better answer. So send email to registered participants. This is what I do when I don't know something. Oops. Usually I try to type it. All right, so let's do registration required. All right, under registration for meetings. These are the instructions for setting it up. Notification. Additional questions. All right, so that didn't answer my question. So let me look that up, how to send a meeting reminder. I know I've received them. To a reg meeting. And I will, after this meeting, go into my, back into my reporting settings, and I will get the usage report for everybody who attended this meeting, and I'll send you that information when I find out. So the usage reports are for all meetings that you have hosted, regardless of whether registration was required or not, and you saw the results that you'll get in there. The meeting reports and polling reports are slightly different. So let me stretch out this timeline, see how many meeting reports I have available. These are the only one where I've required registration. And let me look at one that's already passed. And it'll show all registrants. And then it generates this report. All right. So in the meeting reports, I generated the report. Now here in the report queue, I can come in and download it. So that was from, we'll do the one from May 11th. And let's try this one. And then you can open that with Excel. It's going to take a second for Excel to open on my computer. In fact, I should probably close a bunch of other things just so I don't slow down. All right, so in this event, these are the columns that came through, but I don't have any user data because no one attended. But if people had attended, I would have a username and an email date and when they submitted. This is the poll report. I didn't ask for a poll during that meeting, but if you did, this is where your polling results would come in. And of course, you can't get those until after the meeting is over. So let me open one of these and see if there's better data in one of them. All right, so here we go. Here's the one that I actually did. This is the registration report, and it shows everyone who registered for this event and the fields that I asked for. If you had added some of those custom fields, you would have more columns. Again, you'll see it's not a poll report, it's a registration report. And you would get all the information for all of your registrants in here. All right, and you'll see here the type of report it is. And this one is the only one that I had a poll report on. To get the poll report, you have to actually have hosted a poll. All right, anybody have questions, more things they want to try out or talk about? I can stop sharing my screen so that you can go look in your own Zoom account at what you have available for your usage reports and your meeting reports.
I think the hard thing for me right now is that we are already registering them for the event through Constant Contact. But then when it came time to get the reports, I realized I needed more information from Zoom in order to provide any kind of professional development credit.
Right,
So
because
then that says, well, gee, do we have to register them in both Constant Contact and Zoom? You know, it's like you're dealing with all these programs and everyone does some things, but none of them do all of it.
right, you could use Constant Contact to send out the invitation to register.
Yes.
And then use Zoom to collect the registrations. Now, if you needed more information, and then what you could do is if you ask the right questions, in theory, you could download the registration report from Zoom just before the event happens or right after the event happens, and you could import it back into Constant
That's
Contact.
what I'm doing.
In theory.
But I get, and I'm about to try that with last Saturday's report. I've got it cleaned up enough to import it. It's the permissions issue that's problematic in Constant Contact.
Mm-hmm.
Because if the permissions aren't set, then the email won't go to them. And
in Constant Contact.
In Constant Contact. So
yeah,
I'm going to try it again. The first time I tried it, it didn't work, and I had nobody in my list. But I saw Laura Thomas do it, and so I'm convinced I can do it if I can figure it out.
Right, that's true.
But
now,
there was one where I actually went into every single person's and had to set the permissions.
Yeah, and it can be hard to integrate two different systems no matter what you're doing.
Yeah.
I see there's a question in the chat that Harold answered about the where to find the logos if you need them. And I just wanted to show you, if you're in AU Direct and you, let's say you wanted to download one of the official Antioch download it for that customization, you can go into the marketing button, Marketing Resource Center. And down here under logos and fonts, then you have to click logos and fonts and more. And down here on the right side, you get the logos for each campus program, the master, and you'll see the word mark. It sends you to Dropbox to download it. They have several different versions, And so the ones that are called stacked are Antioch on top of university, usually with the logo, the campus name underneath it. In this case, it didn't have a campus name. And the ones that are called horizontal are a wide line, all on one line straight across. Let me see if I can pop one of these. And some of them are green, some of them are black. So make sure you download the one that you need. So
Does
that's
that-
horizontal versus stacked.
What format does Zoom prefer?
It's not about Zoom necessarily. It's about how you want it to look in your email.
I meant like JPEG, ping, or
Oh, I would use a JPEG.
JPEG.
It's going to be the smallest file. You
Right.
don't want to have people downloading a big giant file. So this is a stacked logo that's green. And you'll see how big it is. That's a quite large for email. That's an EPS file. So I would grab the JPEG. Still 1 megabyte's quite a bit. And it's because it's so large. This is actually shrunk to this size. So you might need to shrink it down to, you know, a more 3 inches wide versus this big 6-inch wide version if you wanted to use it. And you can do that in Microsoft Photos or whatever the innate Mac photo editor is. Usually you can reduce the dimensions of a graphic with that. You don't have to buy any additional software to do that. Or you can just use the big version if you want, but see how, send it to yourself first. Send a test to yourself so you see what it looks like.
Yeah, Bonnie, I tried inserting one, but I tried to insert it as a banner, the horizontal one, and it wouldn't work. So I don't know if we have another specific banner image, or
Did you try a stacked one or did you try the banner?
I tried the horizontal.
Or you tried the horizontal? Okay. So let me run back into Zoom and
It'll actually be
see.
a maximum file size in play here.
Yes, that's what I'm guessing. So, all right, let me get back to my meeting. Let's look at the one with registration. Sorry, my allergies are killing me today. Okay, here, branding. All right, right here.
There it
GIF
says
or
form.
JPEG
Yep.
or PNG. Suggested dimensions 640 by 200 pixels. So I'll show you, this one just may be too wide. If I save image as, and I save it on my desktop, AU horizontal dot JPEG, I don't like, there we go. And then, okay, well, let me, gotta move Zoom. I'm hoping, okay, by default, it's opening in Microsoft Photos and edit and create, edit, and aspect ratio. Okay, you don't want to do that. I don't know. I haven't used, this is a weird one. I often use Photoshop to adjust mine.
I also have an answer to a question here when you're
Go for it.
Okay. Hold on. There is a way to manage registrants so that you can resend the confirmation email.
Oh,
And I can
All
show
right.
you.
Why don't I stop sharing and then you can share.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. So let's share screen 2 here. And so you can see it.
Yes.
What we have here is the registration list for an upcoming webinar going to occur this afternoon. You'll see all the people who are registered for it. Some of them are Antioch, some are not. Most are not. But you can see here that you have a button here that allows you to resend. So you can go click, get everyone, and then resend that confirmation email.
Cool.
All right. So that's essentially the reminder.
Right.
So you're looking up the registrant list, is that right?
Correct.
At the bottom of the meeting, when
Right.
you have the registration settings, you can do that.
So
Right.
is like in that particular one, is Laura or Tom are the hosts? Are they the only ones who can view it, Harold? Or do you have?
I am the owner
You're
of the webinar,
that meeting.
where I can view it. I
Yep.
don't think they can view it.
They can't even go in and see. Can they even go in and see how many people are registered?
Not at present, I don't believe, no.
Okay.
I'm more than
So,
happy to answer the question, though.
yeah. If they're creating it
Good.
in their own account, so if you're sharing an event with someone, Peg, there is a setting in your global settings to give someone what's called registration privilege, or what's it called, scheduling privilege. It allows you to schedule meetings in someone else's account. And in theory, you could also manage the registration and all those things if that event was in someone else's account and they had given you registration privilege.
Right. We'll get there when we need to.
Yeah. Well, it
Cross that bridge.
it depends. I mean, if you're managing the registrants, it probably makes sense for the event to be in your Zoom box. But if there's a reason it needs to be in somebody else's, they can give you scheduling privilege in order for both of you to be able to see and manage users, you know, in case of an emergency or in case the two of you have different roles.
Right. Okay.
That sort of thing. So thanks for answering that question, Harold. I really appreciate it.
Sure.
Anyone else need to look at meeting settings? Do you want to talk about the authenticated users only? Are you familiar with that setting? If you're in a meeting and you have, I'll edit the meeting. You have an option to do only authenticated users can join. What that does is force people to sign in before they can attend the meeting. All right, so in my meeting, let's see if anybody in today's meeting isn't signed in. Nope, everybody's signed in. So first I'll show you in my settings. In my settings, this is one of my new favorite settings that I found. Identify guest participants in the meeting or webinar, it turns it on. And if I turned it on, I believe it's off by default. I turn it on in my meetings. And if someone is not logged in, instead of saying host or co-host in parentheses, it would say guest. It just means that they hadn't logged into their desktop client or to the website before they joined the meeting. They just turned on their computer, clicked the link in their email or in their calendar and joined the meeting. What that tells me is if certain people are having problems. Let's say I had my waiting room turned on, but only for guests. The only guests would come through in my waiting room, and in the waiting room I could advise them to sign in. It won't force them to sign in. But one thing I wonder about is whether they have to have, and this is, I think Harold mentioned this earlier, whether authenticated users means authenticated on Antioch's Zoom account, Antioch's Zoom server, or authenticated in any Zoom account. It's just Antioch, right? You're muted, Harold, sorry.
Oopsie. Yeah, it's authenticated in Antioch's account.
Okay. So if you turn that on, then external people cannot attend your meeting.
Correct.
Okay. Which is great if you're trying to keep out Zoom bombers and you trust Antioch employees. But yep. All right, so we've got 7 minutes left. Oh, Krista says she changed the pixel size and she was able to upload the banner. So that's great. It was just a file size or a pixel size issue. If you guys need help with changing graphic sizes, I can help figure it out for you. I know Peg has all the right software. Usually
use
there's
all of
a
it.
button. Yeah, there's usually a button called resize, and I believe there are even online services that you can say, can resize an image for me. You upload the image, you tell it what size you want it to be, and then it'll spit out a new image that you can download. So if you just Google online tool to resize an image, they may also do that for you rather than you having to do it on your desktop software. So, all right, I'll take more questions. If people have to go, feel free. And the questions do not have to be about meetings or polls. And I'm going to stop the recording for the following questions. So thanks everybody for coming.
Thank you, Bonnie and Harold.